You're tuned into the Growth Ceilings podcast, the show for builders, dreamers, and leaders ready to break limits and grow beyond what they thought possible.
Welcome to the Growth Ceilings podcast. I'm your host, Jim Lovelady, professional EOS implementer. EOS is the entrepreneurial operating system. This show is about real conversations with leaders who bring clarity to complex challenges and help organizations operate with confidence. Today, I'm joined by Bill Hollowsky. Bill is the president of Kruze Consulting, where he helps startups and high-growth companies build strong accounting, finance, tax, and people operations. He's led high-growth professional service organizations, guided startups through scaling challenges, and built operational foundations that support sustainable growth. Bill brings a unique blend of startup mentorship, financial leadership, and operational expertise that helps founders move from chaos to clarity. Bill, welcome to the Growth Ceilings podcast.
Jim, thank you for the invite. Appreciate that. All those rumors are not true.
Well, it's $5 a lie, as I told you in the green room, right? So you'll
Okay, all right.
Okay? Let's start with this. Give us an overview of what Kruze Consulting is.
Sure, absolutely. I always start off with founders. I make a joke. Hey, we do two things. We keep founders employed and we keep them out of jail. So no, what we do is we do all the accounting, tax, compliance. We do some fractional CFO work. So it's all about preparing their books, getting them ready for due diligence, whether it's a new term sheet, possible acquisition, fundraising. So it's all about making sure they're compliant, ready to go, and make that due diligence, basically that peace of mind. Investors come in, ask questions, get them all the information, and you get that check, and they're on to the next milestone.
Which is a fascinating setup for this question. You've worked closely with startups at many different stages. What growth ceiling shows up most often when founders begin to scale?
Wow, there's a bunch of growth ceilings. So we typically work with pre-seed to about Series C. I always laugh that the pre-seed to seed, they're typically two founders, a pizza, and now five AI agents, right? But generally, what's happening is they get that first check or two, and they're going to be developing their first MVP. So it's really about research and development. It's testing their hypothesis, just sort of seeing if they can get some traction and get some feedback and get a viable product. Then what happens is, as they do that next, proof of concept or next round, or they start getting that first set of clients, it's that rapid scaling. So that next couple sets of growth ceilings are hiring. How do I really, deliver the service? How do I really get my MVPs out the door? And then from there, what you're doing is then you've got to build the infrastructure and operations. So what we try to help them do is build their basically fintech stack so that they can grow and scale pretty quickly and not have to worry about all the internal operations while they can focus on growing on the business.
You know this better than I do based on your experience, but I come across a lot of early stage businesses that have delayed building their financial infrastructure.
Yeah.
What risk does that create as companies grow?
Wow. And we've seen a lot of that. We've seen when we talk to some new founders or founders that have been with, hey, maybe their brother Bob, who is an accountant, or somebody local. Their books are a mess. It's a cash basis. Their cap table, which is super important for investors. It's a disaster. So first thing we do is typically evaluate, then clean up, and then really help them get everything organized and compliant. We've seen, founders still paying themselves as contractors, which, in a C Corp, that's a no-no. We've found, companies that haven't registered to do business in different states, haven't filed. So all kinds of just basic compliance issues that you've got to make sure you're buttoned up. Otherwise, you become a big risk and folks don't want to have to pay to have that cleaned up. Folks don't want to bet on it. And you don't look, if you don't have compliance settled, you don't look like a reasonable, savvy business owner that wants to really go. Couple things we've seen, and we've dealt with about 2,600 startups over about 13 years.
Excellent. So you got a lot of experience, obviously. So at what point should a startup shift from that scrappy founder mode to more structured financial leadership?
Well, we tell them that it's never too soon to start. If you wait, you're too late. That's what we try to tell the founders. Now, sometimes when you have that maybe $100,000 check, it's angel, it's family, it's friends, or you're bootstrapping, you've got to be very cost conscious, but you still need to get your accounting in place. You've got to be compliant and ready to go. So it's never too soon. But boy, as you start getting that next couple of checks and you're growing, you've got to be ready. You've got to be focused, and you should rely upon experts, whether it is in HR or payroll or tax or compliance, or maybe it's services or something else. But yeah, it's really never too soon to start building those basics.
So, what mistakes do startups commonly make when managing cash flow during rapid growth?
Wow. One of the couple of big mistakes. I could probably talk for 5 hours on this. One of the mistakes is they see the cash in the bank and they're just growing and spending. Whether it's on engineers, it's marketing, maybe it's on AI systems or other products they have to have in order to build and develop and deliver. And so they're not watching that cash burn. They think, I got 5 million in the bank or 3 million in the bank. That's going to last me forever. And it doesn't. So one of the things we help coach them is take a look at your monthly burn and then calculate how many months you got left before you run out of cash. So you need to, we call it always be fundraising, right? You've always got to be out there thinking. So that's really critical. And if you're not managing that cash flow, it's the first thing that you go out of business with. I mean, that's really just basic number one is managing cash.
You mentioned AI, artificial intelligence. Is this causing business owners, early stage companies to say, hey, I've discovered ChatGPT. I can just upload all this into there and do my own financial management?
Fantastic question. Market, if you will, or the service industry around accounting tax compliance. First of all, a lot of the firms have been acquired by private equity. So you're seeing a lot of mergers coming in and a lot of what we call alternative practice structures going in. So there's a big push. We've seen quite a few vendors that have implemented AI saying, we're going to put accountants and bookkeeping and tax folks out of work. We've seen a couple of big failures that those businesses have gone under. What we believe is AI another tool to really help. It makes you better, faster. It enables you to do research, gather stuff. And I think what it also helps us to do is be more value add to the clients rather than taking us out of business. I think AI and automation can do so much, but there's a lot of gray areas, a lot of things you got to look at, you have to analyze. And so there's still that human element. We call it, the H to H piece instead of, AI or B2B, B2C. It's H to H, human to human sometimes.
Have you reached a point in your own practice where people receive your service, they receive documentation for filing of taxes as a good example, and then they challenge you because they ran it through ChatGPT or some other AI solution, and they come back to you and say, hey, this is all wrong, and perhaps you're finding that there's errors in that process?
We have that all the time. There's some very savvy founders that go out and say, hey, why am I going to pay you to do this? Or what about this? And what you have to be very careful about are really about two things. First is, all right, you don't want to check tax compliance code from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 3 years ago. If you take the OBB, that introduced a lot of big changes around the research and development tax credits. And if you don't pay attention to the most current rules and regulations and sources, the Financial Accounting Standards Board updates GAAP all the time. So you've got to make sure you're focused on that. And then, of course, the second piece is with AI, you've got to be really careful because if you are prompting it in such a way, it wants to make you happy. So it's going to give you some answers that may or may not be valid. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Jim, you could do your corporate income taxes with no problem. Just go use H&R Block or TurboTax or here, just give it to me and I'll do it for you. And boy, it can be a disaster. But hey, you know what? Some folks do it.
With your client experience, is that more of a reaction that you just explained, or are you proactively educating your customer that this is what people do and here's what you provide from a value perspective, and that perhaps you do encourage the contrast, but at the same time, don't be so reliant on expecting that to be the end all?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think we do a little bit of both. So we're always sending out information to clients about some changes, things we're doing, new rules, new regs, new compliance. So it's a little bit about that, information sharing, the learning. And, we love to be challenged because sometimes we're wrong. We make mistakes too. And it's always good to have that question. And what we'll do is, for example, we'll get a pretty complex tax question and we'll pull our experts in and we'll walk through through, hey, here's the scenario client. This is ABC, but then you have to go, if A, then C, and then if C, then D. So we walk them through that. And generally, once we do that education or learning or, ask the questions and help each other, turns out pretty well.
So you founded Kruze Consulting, right?
No, our founder is Vanessa Kruze. So she was in audit for a while, working for one of the big four, and then loved working with startups, started a startup practice. Well, was in with a startup, did an exit, loved doing the accounting and tax. So she started Kruze Consulting about 13 years ago. I joined Kruze in 2019. We were about 150 clients. We doubled the next year, almost doubled. Right now today, we serve just under 800 monthly clients, all VC backed, nothing but.
What would you attribute to your key for that type of growth? What have you done well?
Well, a couple of things. One is process, procedures, I think scaling, hiring. And one of the interesting things is, Vanessa found the traction book and loved it. So we started with vision, mission, values, and culture. And that's something we reinforce all the time. And it is when you think about that, it's about people, process, having your goals and direction, your metrics, and what's going to move the lever. And I think that was our big foundation. We talked about it and wanted to do it. So we decided to pull the trigger and began the implementation.
So you shared with me in the green room that you've started your EOS journey last year in 2025, correct?
Yep, that's correct.
So we'll segue into that for a few moments here. Share with the audience your experience thus far with EOS. What have you learned? What has stood out for you and the leadership team? And what are your expectations moving forward?
Great. Let's see. First thing, I'd say probably the biggest learning that we took away so far to date is, being accountants and tax and delivery and focused. Boy, we thought we would just charge right through it and everybody would pick it up. Everybody would buy into it. Everybody would adopt it. And it's tough. I feel like we're still novices. You have to communicate, and it's the why, right? And it's tying everything together. I think one of the other big things is the people analyzer is pretty tough, right? Is making sure you got the right seats, the right people in the right seats. That was a tough process, but I think we're getting some good traction. We're going through our next quarterly review here in March. We're super excited, and I still feel like we've got so far to go. I mean, it feels like I was talking to another firm. They've been implementing EOS for 3 years, and they still feel like, oh my gosh, every quarter we learn something new. Yeah, a couple takeaways for us.
And just for full disclosure, the audience understand when you use the word seats, the seat that you occupy in Kruze Consulting is?
The president.
Yes, and you're the visionary, right?
Well, I'm actually the integrator. Vanessa Kruze is our CEO founder, and she is the visionary.
She's still with the company.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Yep.
so you're the integrator, which is even more fascinating. So what have you learned in that experience of being the integrator? You've got all the functional leaders of the team
Right.
rolling up to the integrator role. So you play the role of orchestrator in the sense that you're all about the cross-functional experience, the cross-functional execution.
Yeah.
And you need to synthesize the visionary's view and perch of what they think about the business and what they want from the business, and your role to interpret and execute against that. Am I correct?
Oh, spot on.
So what have you learned?
I wish they would have told me 6 months. No, I'm kidding. Well, it's interesting because in the role of president,
Yes.
I can make all the ultimate decisions real quickly, of course, coordinating with Vanessa. It's the way I look at it is, okay, it's not a dictatorship, it's not a democracy, but it's consultative. And so with that, the key point is getting the other execs to buy in, to participate, have those tough conversations, challenge each other, right? And trust. And then with that, I always tell the team, look, I may not agree with the decision, but you know what? If we've made the decision and we feel that's best and it's going to move us and it's going to get us to our 5-year vision, you know what? I'm going to buy in 120%, period. And that's what I expect. So that's been, I think, an interesting piece where you have to balance between in my official role and in the integrator role, you have to balance that, the bringing the team together, getting that feedback, getting the decision make. In some cases, we just got up, like I make the decision, we push forward, defer to Vanessa, we come together, and if we have a conflict, I'll make the best decision and we go. Yeah, it's been a really interesting dynamic.
As I listen to you, I'm reminded of an analogy that I like to make of the integrator role. you don't necessarily write, you play the role of conductor, like with an orchestra, for example.
Right.
You don't write the music. Maybe Vanessa writes the sheet music, but it's your job to interpret what that music is and then to conduct all the functional areas of the business to orchestrate the end result, to orchestrate
Yeah.
the execution of the music to get everybody to play in harmony, right? So oftentimes, like you said, the tough conversations, being the adult in the room, learning how to harmonize the messaging amongst everyone, whether you agree with the decisions or not. What I heard you say, and I'm paraphrasing, it's for the betterment of the business. The business comes first. So we agree to an operating system and we all
Right.
commit to what we need to do as a leadership team. And whether we agree with those decisions or not, we understand from a
Yeah.
trust perspective, this is where we're going and this is how we're going to get there. And for those who don't believe in that, hey, they've got an opportunity to go maybe find something else to do and work themselves somewhere else. But in the meantime, once you get that synchronization of right people in the right seats, you now are using data for how you manage the business, both proactively and long term. You get such benefit out of it. And as you and I talked in the green room, the 6 components of a business, I'll do the cheap commercial right now, the EOS model, right? And making your business healthy in all 6 components of a business, from vision to people, data, issues, how we solve issues, process, how we document and get those followed by all, and then bringing your vision down to the ground to gain traction in the organization. Once you've got that going on, you're unstoppable and you're on your way. I know it's a hard adjustment for anyone listening from Kruze or anyone else in their EOS journey. I promise you, trust the process, stick with it, do the work, and you'll see tremendous benefit.
Spot on, Jim. You got to trust the process, stick with it, and go for it. So you made a really interesting analogy. It was a symphony and orchestra.
Yes.
I would kind of call it, for many companies like us, it was more like a jazz quartet. Everybody was kind of doing their own thing, riffing, playing, doing cool stuff, and then you got to bring everybody together and you get the heart. So I think that's one of the challenges if you're going to use the analogy. So yeah.
I love that. Because I only came up with the orchestra idea, symphony idea, a couple days ago because I was chatting with somebody and educating them about EOS. In fact,
Yeah.
you and I are both residents of Southwest Florida. I came from Chicago 15 months ago, where there's more of a legacy experience in Chicago. The book's traction have been distributed all over the place there. Here in Southwest Florida, EOS is kind of a new acronym, and many people don't understand what that is. I spent a lot of time evangelizing, teaching people what it's all about, and I've gained some traction along the way, but it's been slow. And there's only like 2 of us implementers down here in the Naples, Fort Myers area. So, and it's great that you're doing this and you understand what I'm describing. So I'm a big fan and I'm here as a resource to you going forward, and we'll continue the conversation. Let's come on back to Kruze Consulting and what you do. How should founders think about balancing growth with financial discipline?
Yeah, it's a tough question. And typically, I would say you get most of your sort of lead or direction from, number one, your board. Number two, from some of the investors. Typically the investors will have board seats, or there may be industry experts or related experts. So the question becomes, in terms of, when you take money, you're promising certain things to investors, right? And so there are different models. Some models is growth at all cost, right? We don't care about how much money you're losing, but you got to get that. You got to be first. You've got to be out there. Some investors are about, hey, we want to see the unit metrics, right? We want to see the traction. We want to see certain growth. So I think you're driven more by your niche, the industry, the investors, what you're focused on. So I wouldn't say there's just one answer, but there could be different answers based on what you're doing. If you're in healthcare, if you're in entertainment or media, or if you're in fintech, or if you're in SaaS, you've got different competitors and different things. So not one generic answer.
So, for those leaders feeling overwhelmed by financial complexity, what's the first step towards gaining or regaining control?
Well, make sure that you've got good processes in place to basically record. You've got some systems in place. And then I think you've got to rely upon somebody to help. If you're very financially savvy, you know what the numbers are. You can do it. We've got some really great financially savvy founders that have been through it a couple times, or maybe have accounting background, CPA backgrounds. But we've got folks that do entertainment and research and biotech. They don't understand accounting. So I would say find somebody that can help explain those numbers to you to really help you manage and understand the impact. And we've got a great team that also helps founders do that.
Looking ahead, what changes are you seeing in how startups approach finance and operations?
Wow, Jim, thanks. That's a great question. The big, I'd say 2 or 3 big things we're seeing today. You have to have AI. You've got to have it in your name. You've got to be doing it. It is the hottest topic right now, number one. Number two, what we're seeing in the market is the investors are writing fewer checks, but bigger checks. So you're seeing less startups getting funded, but boy, they're getting bigger checks because they're seeing that growth. The expectation around AI is so high that there is a big focus around not hiring, not growing, keeping your head count down. There's a big trend now back towards solo founders, where if a solo founder is technical enough and they can use AI, they can actually grow and scale the company. So also the IPO metrics and the measurements are getting so just high out there when you look at some of the big IPOs, the big fundraising around many of the AI companies now today. It's a very different dynamic. It's an interesting market and challenge.
Bonus question. I'm going to slip one more in here.
Oh, all right.
One more. This will be the last one. So, you mentioned we talk about startups, and here in Southwest Florida, coming in 15 months ago, it stopped me dead in my tracks, the amount of early stage companies, just the service industry alone here in this area from Cape Coral down to Marco Island.
Yeah.
It's a significant number of companies. And then there's a whole culture around the tech culture, the energy around venture capital, private equity moving into the area. Give me your perspective on what you've seen. You talked about your time here in Southwest Florida. Where do you see the environment right now?
I really see Florida in general as one of the next upcoming hotbeds. We're seeing a couple things, of course, with COVID and the shutdown and everything. A lot of folks moved to Florida. And then what we're seeing is folks coming down from different areas. So Tampa, Clearwater, Jacksonville, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, we're seeing investors move down, or founders that have great exits, family money, private equity. Folks are coming down here and they're seeing this as a really great area. You've got the whole space corridor. You've got all the marine stuff, and then you've got the service. And of course, the state of Florida, there's no personal income tax. So that's a big, benefit for many folks. To me, I'm super excited. We're really seeing a lot more activity. I was just this week at the Florida Venture Conference in Miami. There's some really cool stuff going on in different areas. But yeah, to me, this is a great time, great area, a lot of cool stuff happening here in Southwest Florida, or in Florida in general.
You've been watching the Growth Ceilings podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's ready to grow.